What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV here, back again for some more Tottenham content for you guys, and now we are going to be focusing on some transfer news that has happened and circulating over the last 24 hours. Again, I've got Brains McLeod with me today in Ben's absence, but let's get straight into the stories. And the first one is a slightly concerning one regarding Dejan Kulusevski. And according to Nico Shearer, who's not the best source, I grant you, but he says that Kulusevski's future is now in doubt at Tottenham. The future of Kulusevski is in doubt. Tottenham reflecting on the possibility to pay 35 million to Juventus to sign him on the permanent deal. Kulu hoped to stay at Tottenham, but the talks for his signing have stalled. As of now, Juve waiting for Tottenham's final choice, which actually leads on from some quotes apparently from Kulusevski, from a former colleague of Kulusevski's, who basically was talking to the press, and he said that he said we spoke a week before Conte left, and he said that the problem wasn't the manager, the team must change, and it's an attitude, a change is needed. 35 million is a lot. It's up to Tottenham to decide. He's young and has helped the team a lot, but what he's done at 23 isn't for everyone. If he returns to Juve instead, it'll be a whole other story. He hasn't told me anything, and it's too early to think about it. It will take time to figure out what he's going to do. If important players like Kane want to leave, the situation would change. It's the same thing for Juventus. If Di Maria wasn't to renew, then all of a sudden there's more space for Kulusevski. He would be happy with a manager like Allegri compared to his first experience at Juventus. He's now much more sure of himself, and he's grown a lot at Tottenham. He says, but Kulusevski has had some quotes himself, and he's been talking to the press. He's been talking about this season. He said, it's been tough. I've been very disappointed with my performance in recent months. I have learned a lot. I still have a lot of growth to do, and you can't be too hard on yourself. This season, there's been lots of ups and downs, and it's been hard, but I always have to perform no matter what the situation is. Other teams know how the team plays and about how I play. So we have to adapt and change and find solutions to get better, because it's been difficult. And he's also been talking about the song the fans gave him on the Gimme 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 song. He says, I now have to score much more goals and get assists so I can hear that song a lot more often, because it gives me energy. It's a great song. It's so fun. I always want to make people happy and make people smile. The fans are amazing. You always respect them, and they're a huge part of the club, even when we win or lose. Obviously, the whole thing with Kulusevski and him getting a permanent deal hasn't been completely resolved. I do remember Romano saying when we did sign the deal that if he was to play, either there were two conditions when the deal becomes an obligation, and if we get Champions League football in this season, which we're not going to get, or if Kulusevski plays 50% or more of the games, it'll become an obligation. Now, I don't know, due to injury and stuff, I'm not 100% sure if he's played 50% of the minutes this season. So maybe that gives Tottenham an option to make it an option rather than an obligation, which is holding up the deal. Do you believe, though, that maybe this deal has stalled and maybe we're reconsidering whether to do it permanently, or do you think that there shouldn't be any second thoughts about Kulusevski?
I would say there shouldn't be any second thoughts. Like, he's such a talent. When he's playing, when he's on form, it's something else. It's just his form, obviously with the injury, but as soon as Bentancur went down, it was just, he kind of disappeared. You know, it's he has played 60% of the Prem games this season.
Okay, but maybe it's a minutes thing, because he's been a sub a lot and he's come on, so maybe it's 50% of the minutes or games.
Yeah, that's starting 11, so 60% of the starting 11.
Oh, has he? Okay.
Yeah. So not sure how many, because he's not played every game. He's not, so it depends on the minutes. But I find it's such a disappointing thing, because I think I've never really, he's had some bad games, but even in the bad games, I've just kind of thought, well, he's getting horrible passes. It's not really him. Sometimes he's been a bit late when he's come back from injury, but you expect that because you're out of game time, so it's just, I think it's another thing with us is that our expectations, because of how good he was last season, the amount of assists and goals, we just want that. We just expect that kind of all the time. But we have to realize he's been injured. His best playmaking partner has not been there. It's like it's a tough thing. He didn't go to the World Cup, so in a way that could have also done a kind of demotivation thing for him as well. So yeah, I just think he's the kind of player that, with the right coach, I just think he's a potentially world-class player. Why would you let go of a world-class player? When he is playing at his absolute pomp, like his highest level, like we've seen every now and then, he's unplayable. Like he's got his turn, his drop of the shoulder, and I've seen him do some of these things recently. It's just he's just struggling to find that kind of momentum. Obviously, how is it easy to get that momentum when you've had 3 different managers in a month? We got to give the guy a little bit of a break, but it's just worrying if he doesn't want to stay. That's the big thing. If he doesn't want to stay, but we should be wanting to hold on to Dejan for sure.
100%. And I guess the quotes from his former colleague are slightly concerning, that he's thinking about potentially going back to Juventus is concerning, because it seemed for all the world, since he's come, that he sees his future here at Tottenham. He seems very happy here. He always talks about the future. So those quotes are slightly concerning, but maybe he's taking some liberties as opposed to maybe actually knowing what Kulusevski wants. So if you're talking about just the facts, obviously, if we're talking about performance level, last season he was here for 6 months and got 5 goals, 8 assists. This season he's had a whole season, he's only got 2 goals and 7 assists, which obviously is a massive downturn. But you got to remember, I think the team has struggled in general, not just him. I also think if we get a more attacking manager with players closer to him and he can play off and play quick 1-2s with in and around the penalty area, as opposed to him being isolated a lot and looking and always seeming whenever he has the ball he has to beat 1 or 2 players to create space for himself. It's not the best situation, so I do think that improve. And considering he's still 22, you're talking about 35 million euros. Like, if you're saying, okay, we're not so sure about him, we're going to let this go, where are you finding that kind of talent for 35 million euros at that age? Like, you're just not. So, like, even if you're thinking like he hasn't had the best season, I still think if you're going to want to replace him, it's going to cost you a hell of a lot of money. And like, he's still at a good age as well. He's still got so much time and levels to grow. So I think it'd be foolish to not sign him up immediately, even though his form hasn't been great. I think he still has a good mentality. So I think a new manager would love him, and I think he can be quite a versatile player as well to have in the squad.
Yeah, exactly. Because we know he can. If you wanted to play him as a 10, you could as a 2-10. You could play him in different positions. But I just think I think our attack, if we could keep our attack or all of our attack players being Perisic, so not as a left wing back, but Perisic as a potential attacker, Son, Kulu, Richie, and Kane, then that is an incredible group of players, and you should be able to rotate them. Because if it's going well, I think even Perisic will score goals. If it's going well, Perisic is the player who can give Sonny a bit of rest, or you have Kulu, you have Kane and Richie can rotate. And ideally next season, if we are playing in Europa or Conference League, you want to be giving Kane and Son rest and rotate them, and you want to be rotating players like Kulu and Richie and stuff. So I just think that's a great forward line. But you could imagine all of them with the shitstorm that's going on being like, where am I going next season? Like for 100% fact, I guarantee you every one of them are thinking like, should we stay? Should we go? And they're all waiting to see what's happening. So I'm not really that surprised about what his friends saying, because I think every single one of them, I think if you got every one of their friends, you'd heard that conversation coming from all of them. It's just I'd be amazed and I'd love if we could keep those attackers.
I agree. And obviously, probably Dan Juma set to leave as well. Probably look to bring another one in. Yeah. Next story is about Hugo Lloris. Sorry,
You got Brian,
you got Brian.
Brian
Yeah, you got Brian Hill as well. You got Brian Hill to come back next season potentially as a squad option. But the next story is regarding Hugo Lloris, and this is about a potential offer from Saudi Arabia. And it said this is coming from the Times. It says Hugo Lloris has received an offer from Saudi Arabia to treble his current 100,000 a week wages that he's currently on at Tottenham. He'll speak to Daniel Levy about his future at Tottenham and is waiting to see who the club appoint as manager before making a decision. They also goes on to say that if he does stay, he doesn't want to stay and be back up. If he wants to be number one somewhere. So maybe that will go into his decision making as well. When you look at someone like Hugo Lloris, has had a very hard time in the Premier League this summer. With Tottenham made a lot of mistakes. He's also retired now from international football, despite having quite a good World Cup for France, I felt.
Yeah,
he's retired from international football. Do you think, like, obviously, like, to treble your 100k wages at his age to get 300,000 a week would be a mega offer. Are you like? Do you still think maybe he has a bit to give at his age and should be going maybe somewhere in France or looking somewhere in Europe, or do you think at his age jump with the chance to get 300k a week at Saudi Arabia?
Take the hand off for that. I mean, like, you're not trying to get into your national team, so like in Saudi Arabia, they've got they've got a competitive league over there. It's kind of like the new MLS, like where players go at the end of their career. But there's money. There's way bigger money. So yeah, it's like, go over there and just have a good time and enjoy the final stages of your career. Make that money for your kid's future. It's a strange thing with Hugo because obviously he had so many good seasons, and his game was, he's an incredible shot stopper. Hugo was a boss, but eventually Hugo needed Hugo boss because his performances started to really stink. Do you know what I'm saying? So like, as a goalkeeper, like, now it's a case of like, oh, he makes loads of great saves. That's the bare minimum. That's the bare minimum. Now a goalkeeper is someone who has to be able to play out from the back and do triangles, take the ball under duress, run out and be able to head the ball and be quite skillful, have a great awareness. And I think the game's just drifting a little bit past goalkeepers like him and De Gea. It's like Alisson and Ederson, those types of kind of players, your David Rayas and stuff like that. Players who can actually, they've got feet, So I think he should snap the hand off for that. And we'll always love him. It's just, if he stays another season with not great defenders in front of him, so there's that extra level of doubt, and then making the mistakes he made this season, it's really going to start to knock away at his legacy. So I think he should take it. That's just
even as being a number two keeper, would you not? I mean, he doesn't want to be number two, but if he was a number two, is that something would you want him around for that, or do you think Foster's probably better at this point to be number two?
Yeah, because I feel safe when Foster comes in. At the moment, I feel safer with Foster than Hugo. So now you say you get Raya and he's the number two, and then Raya gets an injury, you're going, oh my God, that's a horrible way to think about such a legendary goalkeeper. Instead of just going, look, he had a great time, he was a legendary keeper. It's sad that he didn't win anything with us, but have a great time, enjoy the rest of the twilight of your career.
Well, talking about Hugo replacements, we have more reports surrounding David Raya of Brentford, and according to Sky Sports News, Brentford are starting to look at replacements for Tottenham target David Raya. The Bees will value the goalkeeper at £40 million and will not sell him for less. David Raya has been on the radar of big clubs this summer, including Tottenham, and Brentford are laying the groundwork on several replacements as the season draws to a close. Obviously, David Raya has been having a very good time of it at Brentford. He's a keeper who's at a decent age, 27 years of age. He's a modern keeper, decent with the ball at his feet. 40 million euros, though, is that too steep, or is that a good price for someone of his quality?
Yeah, his age, quality. He's a modern keeper. He's had, just for the season, he's had some of the saves I've seen him pull off, but also just his competitiveness, his kind of competency as well. I think he's everything that we're looking for right now. I would feel so much more comfortable with someone like him, and then a good line of defense in front of him. I would say our priority, if our priority is goalkeeper, 2 centre backs, maybe an extra strong midfielder or a cam, then 40 million to me does not seem like out of our range. We should be snapping the hands off for that as well.
Yeah, I think we look as a goalkeeper. You got to think of it as a long-term position as well. You want someone who's going to be stable in there and be there for the long term. And I think 40 million at 27, he could easily be there for 5, 6, 7 years, 100%. And with Brentford as well, this is how their model works. Like when you when they've always got replacements lined up for when they sell players. So I think 40 million, they'll probably take that and think, look, we can probably get someone in our scouting department, maybe not as good right now, but has potential to be as good as Raya for probably peanuts, and grow them into, you know, how they grow players at someone like Brentford. So it probably fits their model to sell Raya at that kind of price this summer. Moving on,
it's good. I was going to say it's really good news that they are already making the steps. Like they are accepting that he's not either. For me, that's like, I mean, I get happy with it. Then I think, God, someone else must be in from her. You know?
Yeah. You look. United. You think, well, although there's rumours of De Gea signing a contract, you got to think United might be looking for a new keeper. But then you look at the rest of the top clubs, like in the Premier League. Liverpool settled right now. Arsenal settled. Man City is settled. Newcastle pretty settled with Pope.
It makes sense that he comes to. We're a big club, you know. Like Hugo was here, and he was like France's #1 for years. So you could see that, like coming here, it's like, you know, he was Spain's #1, but like this is a big club, you know. Like we're like going to hopefully, like, you know, we should be consistently fighting for Champions League, and you know, it's a bigger profile. It's a perfect profile for where he is in his life. 27, come to Spurs, bingo.
Next up, we're going to talk about Clement Longley. Now, obviously, Clement Longley's future is up in the air with his loan being done in the summer. But according to Nizar Kinsella of the Evening Standard, Clement Longley is set to return to Barcelona in the summer, with Tottenham not taking up the option to buy him permanently. There has been mixed reporting on the Clement Longley prospective deal. For one, I rate him higher than a lot of other people do in terms of, I don't think he's been a complete disaster at Tottenham. I don't think he's like a terrible defender, but if we're looking like, is he a defender who's going to help us take our defence to the next level, and really, like, is he what we truly need? I just have big doubts about that. Has he solved his confidence issues that he's been having at Barcelona? I have doubts about that as well. But with the price being banned at about 12 million euros, he's still 28 years old. Like, is it a transfer which at little cost could be beneficial? Or is it just let him go back to Barca and be done with it?
There's two ways I look at it. Is like, yeah, that's not a lot of money, and as a backup, you know, left centre back, he's not bad. Like, he really isn't bad. He's got attributes. He's you know, he's good with the head in the box. He can put in a beautiful cross. This season, I never saw him as a real problem. Sure, sometimes he was a little bit lackluster positionally, but then that might be to do with who he's got next to him as a central. He looked like he worked really well with Romero central and him left, and then Emerson coming into the right centre back thing. So I think he could have worked under the right player. But then the other way I look at it is like, if we're keeping him, are we again settling for those standards, those low standards? Like, do we just let's go out and get two really strong centre backs, you know, and have like 4 who can compete for the back 3, you know, or 5, you know. So yeah, so that's the two ways to look at it. Like, I just would feel a bit like underwhelmed if he stayed, you know.
As much as I think both the weird thing about both Longley and Davis is I think both of them are good. Both of them are good backup left centre backs. But when you're choosing between both of them, it's like you're starting either one of them, and like I don't feel ever comfortable with either of them being our #1 left centre back. So you're always in a position where I'm happy with both of them being backups, but I don't want to only choose between both those two. So I, for one, if I can't see us signing Davis, I think he'll be still here next season. So on that on that basis, I do think Longley's probably better off going back to Barcelona and joining a different club. Looking at the next story, this is also from the Evening Standard. This is about Mark Guehi again from Crystal Palace. It says Tottenham and Arsenal have been informed by Crystal Palace that if Mark Guehi is to leave this summer, he will cost them around £50 million to sign, which is a big outlay. He is still quite a young centre-back. Obviously, he's been very impressive when it comes to his performances at Crystal Palace. He does play on the left-hand side as well, a left centre-back. Would you rather sign Guehi for 50 than Longley for 12?
This is a tough one because I've not been blown away by Guehi. You know, it's like he's had a good season. He's a decent player. He's got potential, but I would still want a stronger left centre-back coming in. And I think you can probably get someone from outside of the Prem for less, you know.
You're paying a high English tax, which I keep saying. Like, for a lot of these players, like if you're going for like a Harvey Barnes, or like there was rumours about Morgan Gibbs-White, like they're talking about 40, 50, 60 million for these players. And like they're good players, don't get me wrong, but you're paying an extremely high English tax on these players. And I think Guehi's another one.
Yeah, and I couldn't imagine if, you know, if we get someone like a Nagelsmann or people like that coming in and going, wait, how much did you pay for that player? Like, we could have got this guy for like 25 or this guy free, or, you know, isn't Ndicka on a free, you know?
Yeah,
like,
he's on a free.
It's like there's a solution right there. And I think he's got a lot more potential for growth as well than Guehi. So, yeah, I just don't, I would again be underwhelmed. It's a weird one. It's like when you see that if we're after a player like that and we're going to spend 50 million, it makes me think, well, we're probably not going to buy two centre backs then. You know, it's like, you know, if we're going to go 40 million for a goalkeeper, you know, if we're going 50 million for a defender, you're probably thinking we're probably going to like then fill it with little spot gaps of cheaper players, you know. Whereas if we had ambition, like, yeah, him and Ndicka, that would be, wow, that'd be great. You know, if you could get an Ndicka on a free, obviously it'll come with big wages. Then Guehi, get him. You know, it's like you've got two players, and essentially for the transfer of one. But yeah, I don't know about. I'm a little bit apprehensive about Mark Guehi.
I like Guehi. I think he's done really well since getting break into the Palace team, and I think he's a young, strong defender. I do have a few reservations about his composure on the ball and his playing out from the back. I haven't seen like a fantastic level of like being able to thread passes in between lines and finding midfielders and stuff like that. Albeit, I don't think he's terrible at it, but like I guess maybe I'm a bit blinded because last night I was watching Bastoni and the way he's gliding past players and the way he's stepping into the final third, and literally he's playing through balls to Dzeko, and I was like, oh man, that is like the level we were looking at like a year ago, and I was like, oh man, I wish we had someone like Bastoni through the door, and I just think he's probably not looking at us right now, especially with the Conte not here, but I don't think he's anywhere near that kind of level, and that's just annoying.
That's the kind of player you want, as like a ball playing left centre back, because if we've got like Romero's had a couple like assists recently, and he's putting those balls through, and Dyer had that ability at one point, and you want your left centre back to be able to swing balls in or put balls through the lane, you know. So like that is really a specificity. Like if we want to play out from the back, that's kind of someone we need, you know. If you're playing on the back three as well, sometimes you want to push the press up. You want to have the just two back. You want either side, wherever side it's on, to be able to push forward, you know. So yeah, I think we require someone with a little bit more ball skills.
And last but not least, Ugarte, his agent has been talking about his future in the summer, and he says that Manuel Ugarte is almost certain that he will leave in the summer. Talking about Liverpool, there's a lot of talk, but it's not they are not the only club. There are others also in for him. I believe that in 15 days the situation will be resolved. So his agent has been talking about 15 days apparently, saying this guy is going to have a new club. Unfortunately,
Well, it won't be Spurs, because we
I was
don't do
about to
things
say
that fast.
that timeline definitely worked against Tottenham, considering that we're not going to have a manager and a sporting director in place in 15 days' time. I don't think anyway. I'd be very surprised if we do. So, on that basis, I don't see Tottenham moving for transfer targets while all that other stuff is still to be figured out. Because I think we've made these mistakes before, where we've completed deals like early, and then the manager doesn't want them, or we haven't consulted them. We just don't want to fall into that trap again, do we?
No, makes no sense. You need everything. Like, we're talking about building a culture, a club with standards, and like at the end of the season, like, it's got to be a unified goal, So it's got the manager. Our priority over the next couple of weeks, the next 15 days, should be director of football. Get that in 5. Another 5 days later, get the Julian Nagelsmann in, and then 5 days after that, get Ugarte.
Exactly. That's our 15-day plan to get Ugarte. Come on, it's going to happen. In terms of Ugarte, do you know a lot about him? Would you like him at Tottenham?
Just seen the Champions League games, seen a few highlight reels of him and stuff. Obviously, seen him at a few internationals and stuff. He looks strong. He looks like. Yeah, I think he would be a perfect partner for Bentancur, because they obviously know how to play together and stuff. But it's just how many of these defenders do we have in our squad? Are we going to have in our squad if you are going to bring him in, which I think you should, because I think we should bring in upgrades. I think we should upgrade the level, right? And then he is of the perfect model of who we would kind of want to bring in. He's probably, I would say from what I've seen, he's as strong, but probably a little bit more. He concentrates a little bit more than a Højbjerg this season, right? So, but then I wouldn't get rid of Højbjerg until I'd keep Sarr and see who do you get rid of, But like, if you're talking about upgrading, then Skip might be the only one to go, or Sarr, and then keep Højbjerg, Bentancur when he comes back, Bissouma, and Ugarte. If you think about that, Bentancur, Højbjerg, Bissouma, Ugarte, and then you've got Sarr maybe as a backup, or Skip if Sarr goes on loan. That's quite strong, right? But then are we thinking really upgrading? Are we trying to make space for a Cam to come in, or a Maddison or an Alex Scott or someone? Or are we looking for that as well? Because these are the big questions. This is why you need like a real plan of action, and none of it gets touched upon until you have your DOF, and then you have your. You have your DNA of what you're looking to do, right? Because then you're going to know, are we going to play front foot football? Are we going to have 6 men in the press, 4 in the press, 5 in how are we going to play? So, but if it's just down to like player profile, then hell yeah, because he's strong, he's got that mud dog in it, he's that dog, he's like a fighter, so he fits what you want.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. If we bring Ugarte in, he's just like another midfielder where we have similar type, even though you could definitely argue he's better. And I agree, getting better is always a good idea, but it's just frustrating when we have Højbjerg, Bentancur, we have Skip and Sarr, now we're bringing Ugarte, who's quite kind of a similar kind of midfielder, whereas we kind of need something different. I feel we need a lot more technical passing ability, which we just don't have in the centre midfield. We haven't had that for a while, to be honest. And I think that could definitely be something that we need in midfield, and I don't know if he represents that. And spending money on that kind of midfielder again, I'm not saying it would be a bad thing, especially, but I just don't want it to go at the expense of neglecting other areas, even in midfield. I just don't want that to happen, and we've done that before. We've signed players unnecessarily, and then all of a sudden we're saying, we don't have money to get what we actually need, and it's like, well, you probably shouldn't have spent that money on that unnecessary player then. So that's how I feel about it. But look, Brains, thank you very much. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, are you saying that you would like us to keep space, ideally for next season, for players who are technical on the ball, potentially can play the cam roles, can cut through the lanes?
I'm undecided whether it's a cam. I do want a cam, but I'm undecided what's more important, whether we need a cam more or a dictator in centre midfield.
A really strong 8, a really strong box.
No, not box to box, like a Neves or something, or a Guendouzi, someone who can sit in midfield and has really good passing range. and like
Yeah.
can dictate play a bit, because I just feel like we can play all this possession stuff if, like, say, Nagelsmann comes in, but do we have midfielders who are like super great on the ball, like without Bentancur? I think Bentancur's probably the exception, where he's so good he can take the ball on the turn, beat players, and have good vision. But I feel like a lot of the time, like someone like Højbjerg, he will get the ball, he doesn't know what to do with it, he doesn't turn on the ball, he doesn't have a picture in his head when he receives it, he doesn't look up, he kind of gets it, and then like if there's space he'll drive into it, but he can easily get caught. And I feel like similar with Skip, he's not like amazing on the half turn and vision wise, whereas if we had someone like like I always go back to it, like even a Jorginho, but maybe a better level, but like someone like a Neves, like maybe it can help dictate the play a bit more, help build through from the back as well, which I just feel like we struggle with a lot because of
like a
Barella,
how Barella got into focus last night, and he was like kind of making attacks happen, and then he was back defending, but then he was in their half, he was like kind of controlling like every pass that happened. It's like also they're not scared to like just put the ball forward, like just break the line with the pass, like, you know, like none of this, like constantly going to the side and back and just switch and play all the time, because that's the easiest thing after a while to defend. Whereas you need someone like a Basuma when he was at Brighton, coming into that half space and then doing a 1-2 or just hitting the back corner, you know, like things like that. It's just
maybe if we could make Basuma that, then maybe a number 10 would be the ideal, I guess, in that front. But look, we are running out of time. Brains, appreciate your time, mate. Appreciate you coming on and replacing Ben for the day. I'm sure the viewers would have appreciated it as well.
Well, the female viewers would have really appreciated it a lot more.
Of course. And goes without saying.
Of the show.
Of course. But appreciate all the viewers for watching as well. Let us know in the comment section anything we've discussed today. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.